Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you'll get unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books. They're $10 paperback or $2.99 ebook download, including my latest NYPD Behind the Blue Wall of Silence. All my books make great $10 Christmas gifts, and you can preview all of them for free. I wanted to put out an episode just before Thanksgiving, so I'm releasing this on Wednesday at some point. Next week's episode, I've got a really great guest. His name is Jonathan Dwyer. He's the author of a great book, Greg Scarpa, Legendary Evil. And for those of you who've never heard of Greg Scarpa, he's up there with some of the most vicious mafia killers. He was also an FBI informant for 30 years, so he's playing both ends against the middle. If you ever saw the movie Mississippi Burning, when Gene Hackman and Willem Dafoe are trying to figure out who killed the 3 civil rights workers, and then this FBI guy shows up and he kidnaps one of the Ku Klux Klan guys and tortures him. Well, what it looks like is Greg Scarpa was a contract agent for the FBI. He also claims he worked for the CIA. He went down there and he took care of business and coerced whoever to give up the information. So I'll have that episode. I'm burning through the book right now as we speak, and I'll have that episode out next week. So before we get going with today's episode, I'm happy to announce that Marique Bartolis, who's also a retired NYPD detective and a frequent guest of the show, she started her own podcast, Mons on the Mic. She retired from the NYPD 4 or 5 years ago, so she's got a different and unique perspective of what's going on right now in New York City and with the New York City Police Department. So go out and check out her podcast, and if you like it, subscribe. And another YouTube channel you should check out is BID, B-I-D, List Travels, World's Wonders Discovered. It's a travel channel with videos from exotic places. My old partner started this a couple of months ago. He's trying to get it off the ground, so you guys should check it out and give it a look. One of my listeners has informed me that my reading of the news stories reminds him of the early 1980s film Radio Days by Woody Allen. So I'm going to have to check that movie out over the Thanksgiving weekend. So thank you for the movie recommendation. Okay, so let's get going with the true crime section before we get to this week's story. A Queens senior citizen who shot dead a man who tried to rob him will spend 4 years in prison after admitting to toting an unlicensed revolver as his lawyer ripped the city's draconian gun laws. Well, he's right about that. Charles Fulmer, 67 years old, pled guilty to 1 count of criminal weapons possession Thursday in a deal to end his case after more than 2 years when he fatally shot Cody Gonzalez, who charged him near his Kew Gardens home. The Queens District Attorney's Office chose not to prosecute Fulmer, a retired doorman, for Gonzalez killing after he told cops he defended himself from a mugger who lunged at him at late night, holding what looked like a knife, which later turned out to be a pen. But prosecutors slapped Fulmer with a slew of weapons raps for an unlicensed handgun and an arsenal of illicit weapons, revolvers, rifles inside his home in a quiet neighborhood. Fulmer took the plea deal to avoid a trial where he faced 25 years in prison, which would have been a death sentence, on gun charges that were not hard to prove, according to his attorney, Thomas Kenneth. Lawmakers in New York City and Albany have repeatedly frustrated the rights of law-abiding Americans, New Yorkers that possess firearms, added the attorney. Okay, so this attorney is best known for defending Marine veteran Daniel Penny from charges of fatally choking a homeless man who threatened subway passengers in 2023. After his arrest for the 2 a.m. killing in a driveway near his home on 8th Avenue and Queens Boulevard, Fulmer told cops he'd been packing the silver revolver to protect himself from Big Apple crime. Security footage showed the alleged robber Gonzalez, who had at least 15 arrests dating back to 2004 and a record of mental illness, what could go wrong, continuing to charge at Fulmer even after the senior citizen pulled his gun. Fulmer took the deal Thursday with the understanding that he'd be sentenced to 4 years in prison at his sentencing date on January 14th. This is a sad story. Here's an old man, a doorman, retired, just living his life. Some guy's behind his house. Yeah, he's got a pen, but you don't sneak up on people. You don't sneak up on strangers in back of their house in the dark hours of the night. This guy was obviously up to no good. You fuck around and you find out, and now the Queens District Attorney's Office is going to send this old man to jail for the guns in his house. It doesn't look like this guy was ever in trouble with the law before, because they would have brought up that he was a convicted felon. You know, in New York City, if you get caught with a gun, and let's just say just a regular gun in the street, in my time, first offense and you had no criminal record, you might get probation, but anything else, you're getting a 1.5 to 3, and it goes up. You might even get 1.5 to 3 if you had no criminal record, depending on the circumstances. If a gun was found in your house or a rifle was found in your house and the gun wasn't defaced, meaning the serial number wasn't scratched off and there was nothing else, you could be charged with a misdemeanor. And I think I told the story on this podcast. I recovered a stolen car with the VIN number had been changed years earlier. Myself and the sergeant went up to the victim's house. He lived up in Riverdale. And we were going to, this was a couple of days after we recovered the car and made an arrest. We were going to tell him, hey, you can go to the pound and pick up your car. And we went to this elderly gentleman's house and we bang on the door. No one's coming to the door. And then I kind of looked through. It was like those old doors with the glass panes in it. And I saw the old man walking back and forth. And then I heard, yeah. And he says, police, when he looked, he goes, oh, what's up, officers? And we're like, well, we recovered your card. You got a pen? You can write down that. He goes, sure. And he walked us into the house and we gave him the information. Very grateful. I can't believe you got my car back and stuff. And as we're walking back out, he's got like a little .22 rifle propped up against the door. That's what he was walking around looking for, I assume. And my sergeant and I just kind of looked at each other and we walked out of the house. And my sergeant's a really good guy. He's actually been on this podcast before. I just looked at him and I go, please don't make me lock up this old man. He goes, no, I didn't see it either. So, and that was the end of it. But, New York really plays games with people as far as trying to obtain law-abiding citizens, no criminal history, people that own businesses, people who've been the victim of crimes. They will make you jump through hoops to get a pistol permit. And then they never give you the pistol permit. And it's right. It's not just the city of New York. It's also Albany, which legislates the laws. So it's sad. And this old man is going to do state time and he's going to get fucked around with. And it's just sad. There's no winners in this. The feds are lining up star witnesses in their sex for overtime case against NYPD boss Jeffrey Madry, including a female detective he allegedly slept with and a cop who may have removed KY jelly and other evidence from his office, according to the New York Post. A third identified woman is believed to be another key witness against the disgraced police chief. At the top of the list is Detective Ada Reyes, who allegedly had an affair with the married Madry. At the time, he was the NYPD's highest uniform officer until he was booted last December following the Post's exclusive expose on another underling, Lieutenant Quathisha Epps, who claimed Madry coerced her into having sex with him for years. The Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office, that's the feds, launched its probe after Epps, who resigned shortly after she filed a federal complaint accusing Madry of paying her eye-popping amounts of overtime for sexual favors. Epps last year told the Post in shocking detail how in June of 2023, Madry, 54 years old, leaned her over a couch in his office, pulled out a jar of KY jelly out of a nearby locker, and used it to have anal sex with her. She had sex with Madry at one police plaza about 10 times, she said. Madry has repeatedly insisted his sexual relationship with Epps, 52 years old, was consensual. Detective Reyes, who worked in a domestic violence unit at the NYPD, allegedly stayed in a Lower East Side apartment owned by Epps' family on Madry's orders so he could visit her there, a law enforcement said. Madry had Epps buy things such as towels and other household goods for Reyes with the overtime she was paid. Epps told the Post she confirmed that Madry asked her to allow Epps to stay in the apartment owned by her family, and she described Reyes as Madry's girlfriend. The feds plan to call Detective Ingrid Sanders, who was Madry's driver. Sanders, 54 years old, allegedly did more than drive Madry around town. She also acted as his cleanup crew at NYPD headquarters, according to sources. The plan to ask Sanders about whether she tried to interfere in their investigation by removing evidence from Madry's office, including said KY jelly, before they could search the 13th floor suite, the source said. She went in on her day off to pack up his office, the insider said. After Epps' allegations emerged, then newly police commissioner Jessica Tisch began cleaning house, ousting dozens of NYPD brass last December 28th, beginning with the bosses at the department's Internal Affairs Bureau. The feds plan to offer immunity to Reyes, which would prevent her from invoking her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, the law enforcement source said. It wasn't clear if a grand jury has been impaneled. They wouldn't be going through all this trouble if they weren't going to. They might not have impaneled a grand jury. That's what's coming on the horizon. And none of the women could be reached for comment. Eric Adams may have cut a deal with the president to keep his ass out of trouble, But the clowns he hired to run the police department didn't get the same deal. Eric Adams put unqualified people to run the NYPD. And the 12th floor of One Police Plaza and apparently the 13th floor of One Police Plaza sounds like an episode from that television series Empire. You had a police commissioner who, with his brother, were allegedly shaking down bars for spare change, an aviation commander who allegedly damages a helicopter, and when the FAA finds out, he tries to impede the investigation. Like, what did that guy think? He could pay cash at a body shop and not have to go through his insurance? It's a fucking helicopter. And now a federal grand jury, and I'm almost positive they're going to convene a federal grand jury. But this looks like something you would see in Detroit or Camden, New Jersey, where the mayor goes to jail like every few terms. And it's sad what's happening to a once great police department. Williamsburg residents are getting wise to a glamorous serial dine and dasher, Pei Lu Chung, although she still managed to run up a bill without paying Wednesday night. Meanwhile, the 32-year-old wannabe food influencer arrested 5 times for stiffing 5-star restaurants like Francie and Petaluma is also more than $40,000 behind on her rent in her Williamsburg luxury apartment, the Post has learned. The 5-star menace was dressed in a fur jacket, white Louis Vuitton handbag, and a cashmere beret Wednesday when she went into the Hole in the Wall, an Australian cafe and restaurant on Bedford Avenue in her local area. She spent 5 hours inside and racked up a $77 tab, but amazingly didn't eat a bite of her pan-seared salmon and other crap. Shortly after posting photos on Instagram, of course, before heading to the bathroom. This is how someone like this is getting away with this crap. The restaurant said they didn't want to call the NYPD. She's a Danny girl. I'd rather not use the police, Ross said, adding his manager couldn't get her to leave. He threatened to call the police on her, and she said, yes, please do. Our manager gave up. The plates were full. We took the plates away of food, and she ordered a cappuccino. Chung is apparently unbothered by run-ins with the police. She was arrested twice Saturday, NYPD reports show, and she was given supervised release. Dine and Dasher, frequently wearing Prada, was also arrested and arraigned last week over being unable to pay at a string of other eateries. Chung is a native of Taiwan who moved to New York around 2019 to attend Pratt University on a full-ride scholarship per her LinkedIn profile. She studied design and technology and worked at a Chase Bank as a consultant in 2023, according to the same profile. It's unclear if she still works. However, she does owe more than $40,000 of unpaid rent at her Williamsburg apartment. This bitch needs to be deported. She's making a living off of hardworking people that own these restaurants and her landlord, and it's a big joke. And she's posting this crap on social media to give herself street cred. And I'm guessing if she keeps getting locked up and nothing's being done about it, they're giving her desk appearance tickets. They should run her ass through the system a couple of times. Let her go to Manhattan and Queens Central booking. Then she'll knock this shit off. But cashless bail and now criminals, and she is a criminal. I mean, she's young and stupid, but you're just ripping people off, and it's wrong. A 29-year-old NYPD sergeant, and old enough to know better, pretended to be an ICE agent as part of a twisted revenge plot against a woman who rebuffed him, according to law enforcement sources. Sergeant Akatul Islam, common spelling, who lives at home with his father and brother, met the woman online and made romantic overtures before she rejected him. While off duty, he threatened to send ICE to her Queens home in March, telling her he was a field director with the Federal Immigration Agency, according to federal sources. Islam, also known as James W. Anderson, also warned his victim that she and her family had to report to an ICE location in New York City by April 15th, according to the indictment. The immigration status of his target and family is not clear. The cop came on authorities' radar when the NYPD Internal Affairs Bureau got a report of harassment and discovered he had impersonated an ICE agent during the incident, according to sources. The NYPD immediately reported the situation to the feds. Islam, who works at a Service Area 3 in Brooklyn, was indicted on 1 count of false personation, I think it's impersonation, of an officer or employee of the United States government and was arrested Tuesday. He pled not guilty of his arraignment, was released on $25,000 personal bond by a Brooklyn magistrate. The judge ordered Islam, obviously, not to have contact with his victim whatsoever. His lawyer, John Aurelius, said in court, the NYPD suspended the officer with pay while seizing both his badge and service weapon. That's standard. He's due back in court January 6th. If he did do this, because this is all allegedly, if he did do this, Here's a guy pushing 30 years old, living with his parents, and he's pretending to be an ICE agent, attempting to scare an online love interest. What am I missing here? Instead of playing cosplay, this guy should have grown up, moved out of his parents' house, and lived in the real world. Now, if these charges are true, he's going to be unemployed with a court date. It's just sad. And this story is really weird. Morgan Geyser, who was granted a conditional release earlier this year in the Slender Man case, is missing after she cut off her Department of Corrections monitoring bracelet and left a group home. Geyser was last seen in the area of Cronkey Drive around 8 p.m. on November 22nd with an adult acquaintance, according to the Madison Police Department. Her whereabouts are unknown. Madison police said immediately alerted the public. About 12 hours passed between the time Geyser was last seen and the moment the public was notified. The State Department of Corrections Electronic Monitoring Center gets notified when a device is tampered with, according to the Department of Corrections website. Earlier this fall, Geyser was placed in a group home where she could continue treatment for psychotic spectrum disorder, but the exact location was sealed in court. Geyser's placement brought an end to the 2025 saga that began with her family gaining court approval for a conditional release, so they got her out of jail. Geyser, now 23 years old, along with co-defendant Anita Weiser, were charged with attempted homicide of their friend, Peyton Leutner, who was stabbed 19 times near Davids Park in Wakuska in May 2014. All three girls were 12 years old at the time. Believing they were doing the bidding of the fictional online character called the Slenderman, Geyser and Reeler were found not guilty by reason of mental defect or disease in 2017 and sentenced to mental confinement. Reeler got 25 years, Geyser got 40 years. Weir was granted conditional release on 2021 on a 25-year commitment order. She was freed from monitoring in 2023. This isn't, I get it. These two girls were mentally ill, and apparently Netflix made a series about it. I haven't seen it. But, I get when someone commits a crime and they're sentenced to a certain crime, you say, well, they served their time. Will they reoffend? Probably. I mean, there's a high, especially the more time you do. Basically, you get conditioned in jail and then it's just over. But mentally ill people, you've got to be, really 100% sure they're fine. And they're putting her in a group home. And I've seen photos of her online after she was released. She didn't look fine to me. And God only knows what this woman and there was another guy, there's someone with her because she was in the company of an adult. What could go wrong? But I have a friend of mine I've known many years who suffers from mental illness. And, it started showing up in his 50s and now he's in his 50s. And it's sad. We've tried to get him help, but sometimes it's like, does the medicine make these people worse? Or, that's not my field of expertise, but you got to be 100% sure before you release someone that's not mentally stable because they can hurt themselves or someone else. And like I said, I've got a friend that's going through it right now, and it's very sad. And, it's, we're trying everything, but nothing just seems to work. So I was trying to think of a Thanksgiving story. I've got two. One is with the job. One is with my family. So I'll go with the one with my family. Every young NYPD cop, when I was active in the late 80s, early 90s, the night before Thanksgiving is a great night to go out. Everybody's off. The bars are jumping. Always made sure, like if I was doing a 4 to 12 on the night of Thanksgiving Eve, right after, I would go out to the bars with my friends, or if I was doing a day tour, you'd go out. And the amount of maneuvering within the NYPD, I don't know if you can get away with this now with computers and everything else, but like when the holidays were coming up and you had to work, that's when the maneuvering started. Guys would go sick. I never went sick to get out of going to a detail or work a holiday. But what I would do is, if I was doing 4 to 12s and I wanted to do a day tour to be home with my family for Thanksgiving, if an arrest came up, I'd take it, do a day tour, and then spend the time with my family. Anyway, I went out a lot on Thanksgiving Eve, and I lived downstairs in my aunt's basement apartment. So my mother and my aunt had this thing where my mother did Christmas 2 doors down and my aunt did Thanksgiving. And my mom had a very strong personality. And, instead of helping my aunt get the food ready and everything, my mother just kind of would take control over my aunt's house. So I would always ask my aunt, what time do you want me to come upstairs? She goes, well, we're not going to eat till about 1:30. She goes, your parents, they're going to be here by 11:30, 12, drive me crazy. Don't come up till about 1. You don't got to tell me twice. So I'd stay out late, wake up, put on the parade like everybody else, make a little breakfast, have my coffee. And then I go upstairs at 1 o'clock. And my mother would look at her watch and go, 1 o'clock? We've been here for an hour. I'm like, you guys live 2 doors down. It's not like I lived out of state. And that just used to drive my mother crazy that I would come up at 1 o'clock. I'm like, well, talk to your sister. That's the one who's telling me to come up at 1 o'clock. But she wouldn't. But the funny thing is, one time she turned to my cousin, my aunt's daughter, who was young at the time, and she said, "Oh, Vic's coming up. Vic's going to come upstairs in a little while." My mother's like, "He's not very reliable." I got so offended by like, not reliable. I've had this job for X amount of years, no problems. I'm not reliable because I don't come upstairs at 1 o'clock. I don't come upstairs at 12 o'clock when those crazies get up there. The second story is later in my career, sometimes if we worked a 4 to 12 in my office, we'd all go to the bars. And a lot of the guys lived upstate New York. Now, I lived in the Bronx, so what we would do is we would compromise. We would go to Yonkers because that was on the way for everybody, the guys that would go upstate to go home. So one night, it was like 6 or 7 guys from my office who were all going to go out for Thanksgiving night, Eve. And what winds up happening is, I don't know if a phone call came in, something, I got stuck. And I just told everybody in the office, we'll just go up there. I'll meet you guys up there. So I was about 15 or 20 minutes behind. And one of the guys that was coming out with us that night, when I tell you this, he's one of the nicest people. If you met him, you'd say, what a nice guy. He's like one of the nicest people you ever met. Quiet, but just funny and good guy, family guy, kids, the whole 9 yards, right? But he could not drink. And if he had 2, maybe 3 beers, there was a change in him. And I had never seen it. I've heard about it. And then when you see something like this, he just would turn, 2 beers. He was a different person. Like all of a sudden the eyes are darting around and, he just he would get aggressive, and it was just so not in his normal day-to-day demeanor. So I find parking. I go into the bar and the place was packed and I could see through the crowd something was going on, some kind of ruckus. I'm not getting involved in it. First off, it's Yonkers. It's not even New York City. And number 2, I'm not getting involved in a bar fight. So anyway, whatever happened. And I order a drink and it's like 3 deep. So I had to wait another 10, 15 minutes before I get a beer. And I just got the beer in my hand. And another guy from my office comes running over and he pulls at me and I go, "What's up?" He goes, "Come on, let's go." And I said, I just ordered a beer. We're going someplace. He goes, "Let's go." And he goes, "Vic, just put the beer down. Let's go." So I knew something was up. I put the beer down and I go outside. And I go, "Where's everybody else?" He goes, "They're in the parking lot leaving. Come on, let's go." So I go out into the parking lot and the guy that I was telling you about, the really quiet guy, he's holding his hand and apparently he had his 1 or 2 beer minimum. Someone bumped into him. Someone said something to someone else. And what it looked like is he broke the guy's nose and then he started squaring off with the guy. That's when I saw the ruckus in the back. I didn't realize it was the guys I was with. So they all got thrown out. He got thrown out. The guy he punched in the face got thrown out. And I says, "Well, you guys should really get out of here because if this guy wants to call the police and something, I'm not getting hauled into this." So we just all went our separate ways. He didn't want to talk about it when we saw him, after Thanksgiving and everything. Like, "What happened?" He's like, "I don't want to talk about it." So, it was one of those things. After that, we kind of, we really limited the time we were out with him and when he would consume alcohol. So I apologize. This episode is just kind of thrown together, but I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I want everyone to have a great and happy Thanksgiving. Next week's episode, I promise, will be a lot better. And as always, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially my listeners, Peter Carmichael in Philly, Mark Reich, Jack Harley, Joe Massell, Craig Benz, and Scotty Dunn. If you work in law enforcement or have an interesting criminal background, please drop me a note on Twitter or Instagram at VicFerrari50. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. If you enjoy the content, check out my Amazon Author page. Type in my name, Vic, Ferrari like the car, where you can preview all my NYPD books for free. Thanks again, everyone, and I'll see you next week.